Yeah, which is now.
Got some. I'm just about to hear an echo for a moment or so. That echo should have gone. Oh. We're still at 6:30. Hello, everyone. My name's Raj Mandar from Hardware Communications. Thank you for attending this evening's consultation event in relation to the corner of Cavendish Road and Brighton Road in Sutton. Hopefully you have heard about this event from receiving a leaflet in the post that would have been sent in the last week or so, or from your fellow residents, or some of the posts that we made in the local Facebook groups. In terms of the purpose of this evening, we're working on a development scheme, a residential development on the corner here of Brighton Road and Cavendish Road, and we're really here to kind of present you the plans themselves and get residents' views ahead of a submission of the planning application that we intend to submit later on in the summer. Your comments and your views will help develop the scheme further, but also they'll be captured as part of a document called the Statement of Community Involvement that goes along with the submission of the planning application that demonstrates that we have consulted and engaged with residents, community groups and businesses as well. On the panel here, we have Kevin Goodwin. Do you want to say hello, Kevin, and explain who you are?
I'm Kevin Goodwin. I'm the planning consultant, and I will be the agent for the planning application when it is submitted to Sutton Council.
And we have Marco Tomasi, who I accidentally called Thomas last night.
Yeah, it was my name that was wrong. It's not your fault, Raj. So hi, everyone. My name is Marco Tomasi. I work for Formation Architects, and we are the architects on the scheme.
I believe we also have Hayden Thomas here as well. Might be able to field some of the questions later on as well. So I'm just going to quickly move on in terms of the format. So as I mentioned, this evening it's going to last for an hour. This event is being broadcast onto our website via YouTube as well. The video of tonight's session and yesterday's session will be uploaded onto the website. Hopefully, well, once you leave this evening's event, there will be a type form, a website that has a poll, so you can ask answer some of our questions and provide us with some feedback. You should hopefully have seen there is a function called the Q&A, which is your opportunity to ask some questions about the scheme itself. And ideally, I think we'll look to run a bit of a presentation for you, and then save those kind of questions and answers towards the end. We have received some questions also from the post as well. We'll try and group them thematically as we can. And hopefully, Marco, you have control of my screen also. Should we just double check that you do?
Yes,
perfect.
I do. Yes.
So, and I'm just going to turn off because I've got some sirens in the distance.
All right, so I'll take over. Thank you, Raj. I'll go through our presentation tonight to talk you through the scheme that we are proposing. We have a couple of slides about the applicants and about ourselves. Formation Architects, we are an 80-strong practice based in southwest London, specialising in residential schemes all around London and the south west of England. And without further ado, let's see if this works. Yes, okay, no, it's too fast. Sorry, for some reason, there's a slight disconnect between Yeah, okay. So this is the first slide of the presentation. So we have a site location plan on screen. Edged in red, we can see the site at the corner between Brighton Road and Cavendish Road. The site is currently occupied by 3 properties. You can see them here, 1, 2, and 3. The site is about 0.15 of a hectare in area. The 3 buildings that are on the side are 2 stories with quite a high pitch roof. So we qualify those as 2.5 stories for the sake of comparing them with neighboring heights. We're not in a conservation area, and there isn't any listed buildings on the site or in the immediate vicinities. So if we move on to the next page, we can see some site photographs. There are, as I said, 3 buildings on the site. There are some trees at the corner. So this little corner here, this patch of green, is actually excluded from the site. The ownership of that area lies with the council, and our site is immediately behind it. So you can see here the viewpoints where all these 4 photographs are taken, all along the Cavendish Road and Brighton Road. Moving on, we have a page that illustrates the policy framework that we're working within. The site is immediately to the south of the Sutton town centre, and as such is earmarked for intensification. You can see that in this first map here. So the pink shaded area is the area for potential intensification, whereas the blue area is the Sutton town centre, where we can have taller buildings. We are within a network of connectivity within Sutton that links all the various town centre around the borough. So to add to this, we also have assessed the accessibility level of our site in terms of public transport access, and the site itself has a very high public transport accessibility level. The level is 5. It's on a range from 1 to 6, 1 being the lowest and 6 being the highest. So it's very near the top of the range, and that's thanks to the proximity of the Sutton train station, which is within walking distance just north of the site, and also thanks to the presence of numerous bus stops all along Brighton Road and also Cavendish Road. So looking at the local context, we've obviously assessed the character of the area and the type of buildings around the site. And one thing that comes immediately apparent is that there is quite a wide variety of buildings around our site. So we have obviously the 3 houses on the plot. There are some more houses immediately to the south. You can see them here along Brighton Road, and some on the opposite side as well. And then there's a number of larger buildings, some with quite a high story count. So the one immediately opposite, there's a block of flats with 12 stories. We have 6.5 stories here opposite Cavendish Road. Again, 11 stories a bit further to the south, and a large office block with 4 stories. But mind you, the office story height is generally higher than residential story height. So the equivalent height of that building would be closer to, say, 5 to 6 stories. So generally speaking, as we move closer to the town centre, buildings get higher and the footprints of the blocks also becomes larger. Whereas where we move south towards the more suburban areas of the borough, we have a more lower density context with more houses, semi-detached, detached houses, and less taller blocks. So we looked at the design objectives for this site. We have identified it as a very good opportunity for a residential redevelopment to add residential units. We know that Sutton has a target, a number of units that needs to achieve, and we feel that this is a perfect candidate to support the need for more housing. We have obviously an important, quite prominent corner between Brighton Road and Cavendish Road. We have currently quite a weak street front with the houses set back from the street line. We think there is an opportunity to reinforce that corner and create a more meaningful event in townscape terms. We also think that there is an opportunity to have some amenity space at the back, some high quality landscaping within the site, and that also will give an opportunity to connect better with the neighbouring properties. So what we are proposing at present and what we are consulting on tonight is a scheme for 36 new homes in a block of flats over 6 stories, stepping down to 5 and 4 stories to the east and to the south. The current mix that is proposed is for 10 one-bed flats, 21 two-bed flats, and 5 three-bed flats. All the units will be designed to meet minimum space standards in compliance with the London Plan and the nationally described space standards. 10% of the units will be designed to meet the wheelchair housing standards, and those will also have a car parking associated to them, whereas the rest of the scheme will be car free. There are other areas in the scheme dedicated to landscaping. That's mainly at ground floor level at the rear and at roof level, where we have a number of roof terraces which will be accessible by residents. We also have cycle storage in the basement and refuse stores at ground floor level. So if we look at the plans in a little bit more detail, starting with the ground floor plan, we can see that we have a building that follows the alignment of Brighton Road, which has a slight angle, if you see here. We were very keen to maintain a meaningful strip of greenery along Brighton Road. That's very much the character of Brighton Road, with buildings set back from the pavement line. So we have pushed the building back to respect that condition and maintain that alignment along Brighton Road. As the building turns the corner on Cavendish Road, we have a different alignment that picks up the frontage of Lavender Court, and you can see there that we align with the neighbouring care home. So the area to the southeast is, as I said earlier, dedicated to landscaping. We have car parking here at the north, immediately access from Cavendish Road. So what we've done is we've tried to keep the kind of circulation area for the cars as short as possible, so that most of the site can be kept green. The main residential entrance is off Brighton Road. We felt that is the main frontage of the development. So the front door, so to speak, should be on Brighton Road, and the main entrance is located here, roughly halfway down the site, and will be clearly identified with a double height space. It will be quite celebrated and very easy to find. If we move on to the upper floors, we can see how the floor plans work. So we have a single core with stairs and lift, which you can just about see there in the center of the plan. We have a corridor serving all the units. You can see that the plan has been structured in such a way that it's got plenty of corners. So all the flats actually enjoy a dual aspect condition with windows on 2 sides. That gives all the internal units an opportunity for more fenestration and for a variety of views out of the flat. So that in terms of internal quality, that is a big plus. So we've applied that principle to all the units wherever possible. You can see here the units have been also color coded. So the orange ones are the 2 beds, the yellow ones are the 1-bed flats, and the purple are the 3 beds, which are generally located here in the corner. As we move up the building peels back from the southern boundary. So we have 4 floors throughout the site, and then it starts stepping down. So we only have 4 levels here and 3 levels there. And then as we move up, we've got 5 here at this end, and then at the top 6 levels only for half the footprint of the building. So only these 4 flats here reach the maximum height of 6 stories at the corner, and that's done deliberately to mark that corner and make a little bit more of this prominent location. We also have a plan of the basement here at the bottom, which is quite contained. It's only really there to provide some plant area and a cycle store. There's quite a high provision of bicycles. That's again in compliance with the London plan. So there's roughly 60 bike spaces for 36 units. We have not yet finalized the elevations, so we are just starting to look at how what the building could look like. That is something that actually we'd like to have your opinion on. But the key principles really are to use a sympathetic approach to the elevations. It will be a contemporary building, but we want to use traditional materials, mainly brick finish, perhaps in different shades of brick. There's quite a lot of nice red brick buildings around the area, so that will be the cues that we're taking for the architectural elevations. We have some reference images here. They're really there just to give a flavor for the color of the brick, the textures. It's not really to say that the building will have this kind of slightly severe industrial look. It really is just to give a feeling for the colors. We're not anticipating the use of any cladding for this building, metallic finish, or other materials. We are thinking that it will be pretty much completely clad in brick. That is a durable material, it ages well, and we think it also helps tie in the building within its context. We move on to the last section of the presentations. We have some 3D visualizations. So we have modeled the building digitally in 3D, and we've dropped it within this context model that allows us to assess the impact in terms of townscape of what we're proposing. So this is a view from Brighton Road, taken a few hundred meters south of the site and looking back into the town centre. So those taller buildings that you can just about see at the back there are all within the town centre, where we have some taller buildings, as we all know. This yellow element here is our proposal. And you can see that from this distance, the building really sits within the general roof line of the buildings around it. So it's not particularly prominent when viewed from this particular viewpoint. This is a closer image. So we are still on Brighton Road, still looking north. So this taller block here is a 12-story apartment block on the opposite side of Brighton Road. And in yellow again is our proposal. And you can start seeing here the stepping. So we've got the 6 stories there at the corner, stepping down to 5 and then stepping down to 4 levels, which just about, misses the height of the ridge of the house to the south, which is a 2.5, 3-story equivalent at the ridge. So there is a gradual stepping that helps tie in the massing with the immediate context. This is a opposite view from Brighton Road again, but looking south. So we can see the building here at the corner, and with the trees at the front, some of them are within that little triangular patch that belongs to the council. Some are within our site. We've got the 6 stories here at the corner with the balconies, and then stepping down to the 4-story towards Lavender Court, which is just behind this larger block, which is the 6-story block opposite Cavendish Road. So this is a view from Cavendish Road, and we can now see Lavender Court. It's this grey building here, and you can see this again, the step of our building stepping up to the 6 stories. The 6 stories is a height which pretty much is in keeping with the kind of medium range height buildings around the area. So we've got some lower buildings at 2 to 3 stories. Then we've got some quite tall buildings at 11, 12 stories. And then we've got this family of medium height buildings at around 6. And that's what we're relating to. So we feel that we're actually being quite conservative with the height here and quite contextual, relating to this kind of mid height that's quite prevalent around the site. So this is a view from Grange Vale, which is a street that's opposite and ends up on Brighton Road. So where that car is there at the bottom, that's where the Grange Vale meets Brighton Road. So from this side, you can see again our corner with the 6 stories, and then you can really see clearly the step in here down to 5 and 4 to meet the height of the houses to the south. We've got a couple more images. This is an aerial view, and it's quite useful because I think this illustrates quite well what I was saying earlier in terms of relating to that mid-height of the buildings around the area. So we've got the taller 12 stories here, and then we've got these 6-story blocks all around here, this cluster, and that's what we're relating to. But we understand that then there's also a transition down to some lower buildings towards the south, and that's what our building really does in quite an obvious way, with this stepping both in plan and in section and elevation, so from 6 to 5 to 4. This is an opposite view from an elevated position again. So Lavender Court sits there, and again you can see our building here. And I think we've got that's probably the last image for tonight. So I'll pass back to Raj and we'll take a question. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Marco, and that's really, really helpful. I hope you've all found that very helpful and informative. Just one thing I wanted to clarify. We had a call earlier from a resident asking in relation to what is actually being developed, and a question about whether Melton Court was being developed. I have to emphasise that no, Melton Court isn't being developed. The site outline here indicates, and should have received in the leaflet, the post of those 3 houses that are on the corner of Brighton Road and Cavendish Road. It does not include Melton Court. Just a reminder, there are you can ask questions in the Q&A function there. I see we've got about 15 questions. I'll see if I can start with some of them. So one of the first questions I can see is the level of affordable housing. So, so this development will include affordable housing on site. I understand with the application we're looking to submit, we're proposing 35% of affordable housing. In terms of the split and how that's composed, the composition between socially rented homes and shared ownership is yet to be determined in collaboration with London Borough Sutton. Is that right, Kevin, in terms of the proposal for affordable housing?
Yes, certainly we're aiming at 35%, and so some of the units will be market for sale units, some will be shared ownership, and some will be social rented or affordable rent. We are actually in discussion with a registered provider or housing association, and they may well be a joint applicant with the application as well, and they would certainly take the affordable units within the scheme and then work with Sutton on the social rent units in terms of finding occupiers for those. So it will be a policy compliant scheme in terms of the level of affordable housing expected from a scheme of this size.
Well, funny enough, you mentioned them to market sale. There's a question here of how many of the flats are, or how much, sorry, are the flats for sale. So in terms of timelines, we're still a good couple of years away from for homes being ready for sale. I I'm right in saying that that's yet to be determined, and I'm sure they'll be in line with market prices at that point. I think at this stage it's just too early to say how much they'll be on sale for.
Yeah, there's questions in the Q&A about when would it be built and how much they would be sold for, which to a degree go hand in hand. We obviously got to make a planning application to Sutton Council. They have a period of time, minimum period of 13 weeks, in which to decide whether to grant permission or not. And then any permission that is granted will then be accompanied by a number of planning conditions, of which some of those are called pre-commencement conditions. So they then have to be individually discharged as well before anyone can put a spade in the ground. So by the time we made the application, Sutton had their 3.5 months. Then we've discharged pre-commencement conditions will be into 2022. And then you'll be looking at the back end of 2022, 2023 before the development is probably ready. So we'd be crystal ball gazing as to how much they might go for at that particular time. So as you say, it's a bit early to know. We will know better in next year, economic wise, etc.
One thing you mentioned was the kind of planning process. So just to remind residents that right now we're running a consultation, and this is part of that consultation ahead of submission later in the summer, and then Sutton Council will be running a statutory consultation. Some of you will receive notices in the post. We'll inform you as well when that starts, when the application has been submitted, and all the various different reports that go alongside this planning application will be submitted and available for you to see and comment upon. And I'm just going to, so someone asked how much for a new property. Let's go to, oh, here's a question. So why can't you just build houses and not flats? I'm going to go to Kevin on that one.
Well, obviously we've got 3 houses on the site at the moment. So if you put houses back, you'd probably be a status quo. We are, as Marco indicated at the beginning, in an intensification area within the Sutton local plan, which is the planning policy document for the borough of Sutton. We're also within the Greater London area, and so we have 2 levels of planning policy, one being the Mayor of London's London Plan, which is the kind of strategic level, and then we have Sutton's level of policy as well. And we are encouraged by both authorities to provide as much housing as you can optimise on a site without overdeveloping a site, I should emphasise. And because we're in intensification area, you can obviously get more dwellings on a site if you build flats than if you build houses. So we are optimising the development of the site. One of the questions was, I think in Q&A was, have we had any discussions with Sutton? And yes, we have. We've had 2 meetings with officers at Sutton. And I know, Raj, you've spoken to ward councillors as well. But certainly we've had discussions and we've had encouragement in principle from them. I mean, they've got to see about the planning application before they can give us a finite view. But the reason we're building housing, building flats in this particular case, is that I'm sure people will know there's a dire need for housing throughout the whole of England, Scotland and Wales, particularly in London and in all the London boroughs. And Sutton have a target that they need to meet. If they fail to meet the target in terms of delivering, they get penalised by central government. So this will be a valuable contribution, we feel, to assisting Sutton meet its targets whilst being compatible with the area and having regard for the amenities, residential amenities of those residents who adjoin or in very close proximity to the site.
The only other thing I would mention is, Ken mentioned some of the targets and the site. So I understand, according to Sutton's local plan, they've got a target of wanting to build 427 homes per year up until 2031. And also there's the demand for affordable housing that this development will deliver as well. And in relation to, so we have, we briefly briefed the ward councillors at the end of last week, and we'll be continuing to look to brief them and speak to residents and community groups and businesses as ahead alongside the planning process itself. Says that. I think we've answered. Oh, here's a question. So, are there going to be any lifts? 6 stories is too many stairs. I'm going to go to Marco. I'm confident to say that there is going to be a lift,
Yes.
but Marco, are you able to point out where the core is likely to be?
So yeah, there will be a
Leave
lift. It's a requirement to have a lift with a building of this height. The core, I think, is probably clearer on the following page. Let's see. Well, we can see it on the one that's on screen now. So the stair core is this area here where you can see next to the yellow flat there, and there is a stair and a lift, which actually is big enough to accommodate bicycles, because the bike store is in the basement. So it's quite a large lift, in fact, that will serve all the levels of the development.
And whilst you're there, I'm going to see if there's another design-related question that we can perhaps answer. So we've got a question here. Is the design flat-roofed, as according to the slides, or will it have a pitch roof to fit in with Lavender Court?
Yeah, so at the moment, we haven't really finalized the design of the exteriors, but we are anticipating the use of the roofs as amenity space. So there will be accessible roof terraces. And in order to achieve that, you really require a flat roof. There is in the area quite a mix in terms of flat roofs versus pitch roofs. Taller buildings, from say the 6-story kind of mark and higher, tend to have a flat roof, whereas shorter buildings tend to have pitch roofs. So by that logic, it would be more contextual for us to have a flat roof, and that's what we're showing in this indicative massing images. That said, we are actually toying with the idea of having a more varied roof form, but we haven't quite finalized it. So I think it's likely that it will be flat roofed, but we are not set on any specific design yet.
In regards to that question, for the person who asked that, I don't know whether, so in the feedback form that or send again also in the chat function that comes up, it would be interesting to know your views and others' views as well in regards to thoughts on the roof. So I think we've answered the question in regards to. In terms of, so there's a question just about the roofs of Lavender Court, but there's a question here about what the distance is between Lavender Court and the development itself.
I just measured it actually, because I saw that image and I just measured it. Now, if you go to the plans, please, Raj, that would be yeah.
The ground floor?
Yeah, that's perfect. So our building is right on the boundary where we have the access to the parking spaces. So you can see there at the top, that's where it's closest to Lavender Court. However, there are no windows there facing Lavender Court. The closest windows will be where you can see that yellow flat just below the parking. And that's about 25 meters from the closest window on Lavender Court. So that's quite a healthy distance. Normally, there's a minimum of 18 meters for facing windows. So we're well in excess of that. And as we move down the site, the second flat at the bottom there that also faces Lavender Court is further still by another 2 to 3 meters. So it's almost touching 30 meters in terms of separation to Lavender Court.
Can I ask a question about that? So is that because the homes themselves will propose terraces or balconies, is that a distance from
So this is from facing windows.
Okay, facing windows, right.
The balconies will be slightly closer. The balconies are 1.5 meter deep, so you would have to discount that to the distance, but you're still in excess of your 20 meters and a little bit more, even if you include the balconies. So we're quite confident that in terms of loss of privacy or overlooking, we don't have any issue. I should add that we have a healthy strip of landscaping between our site and Lavender Court, which will also mitigate any sense of overlooking through some planting. Another aspect that should be considered is that on the opposite side of the boundary, we have the car parking. So it's not a particularly sensitive area of Lavender Court. It's not an amenity space, or, you know, it is a utilitarian area that will not suffer from any loss of privacy. The same in terms of loss of light, the same kind of distance and separation between the two buildings also means that we're not anticipating any loss of light for Lavender Court. There will be a full assessment of the impact of the building in terms of daylight and sunlight onto all the neighbouring properties that will be submitted with the application, and any impact will be recorded there. But the distances and the heights are as such that we, as I said, do not anticipate any meaningful impact on the existing levels.
Myself off of mute. And one thing you mentioned, Marco, was the landscaping plan, and that goes alongside the planning application itself as well. So one question, I guess, it relates to landscaping and the kind of greenery proposed work to greening around the development. There's a question about the yew trees. So I guess,
yes.
Are we losing any trees?
So the trees, there are some trees currently on the little strip of land that's just outside our site, the one that I was mentioning earlier, that belongs to the council. So we're not affecting those trees, those will remain. There are also a number of trees on the site. So what we have done is we have surveyed all the trees on the site. Some are of better quality than others. So for those of you who are familiar with such categorization, there are category A, B, C trees. So we're trying to retain all the good ones, so category B and above, as much as possible. And we will have to remove some trees on the site, but every tree that we remove, we will replace. So there won't be any net loss of trees, and the replacement trees will also be mature trees, so that the site as a whole will have at least the same amount of trees once the development is finished.
And in terms of the trees, so the replacement trees themselves, do they end up becoming, the question that came in earlier on today was whether they are real trees or whether they're kind of saplings that take some time to grow? So
there will be a there will be a detailed landscape plan that will identify exactly what trees we're planting and how mature those trees will be. This has been refined as we speak. We haven't finalized it. There is obviously a preference for mature trees, and that's what we will be pushing for.
So to those residents who've asked that, so along when the application will be submitted, a summary and link of the application, as well as details of those reports will also be shared as well as the kind of landscaping reports, a report in relation to transport as well. And that brings me on to my next kind of question. Won't this cause too much traffic, Kevin?
No, the proposal makes provision for 4 spaces on the site, as you can see on this drawing that's on the screen. Wasn't the drawing, it was on the screen. Those are for disabled or blue badge holders. As mentioned in the opening, and as mentioned in the first bullet point on this slide, that the site has a public transport accessibility level of 5 on a scale of 0 to 6B. So we're quite near the top of that. We've got 6A and 6B above us in terms of the accessibility by public transport, non-car modes essentially. On this drawing, we can see the bus stop, northbound bus stop, and the southbound bus stop on Brighton Road and other bus stops in local roads. You've got a relatively short, slightly downhill walk to the station, albeit slightly uphill walk back from the station. And there's a range of services that Sutton Station provides into London, into Wimbledon and Croydon. So it rates very highly. And as I mentioned earlier, we have two levels of planning policy to deal with when considering a site. The first is the London Plan, which was adopted most recently in March this year. And then we have the Sutton's 2018 plan. The requirement is, and it's a requirement, not something we can be flexible about. It's a requirement that we don't provide any car parking for residents of the development in a P-Town 5. And if we were to provide car parking, A, it would take up valuable space that could be used for landscaping, and B, it would be an instant refusal reason for us from the borough because we would fail to meet policy. So that's why there is no car parking of a general nature for future residents of the scheme unless they're in the wheelchair units that are on the ground floor and need accessibility for mobility issues, and therefore they have the disabled parking spaces. The site, Cavendish Road, which the residents will know, is a controlled parking zone, Monday to Saturday, for the majority of the working day. I think it's 8 or 8:30 till 6:30, Monday to Saturday, and therefore I would expect the scheme also to attract a legal agreement which would say that none of the residents will be eligible for a parking permit. I think it's parking permits on the south side of Cavendish Road and parking permits and pay and display on the north side of Cavendish Road, but new residents will be unlikely to be eligible for a parking permit. And so they will be aware of that when contemplating purchasing a flat in the scheme, that if they didn't have a disability that required a blue badge space, they wouldn't be eligible for a parking permit, and they would take that into account when purchasing a flat within the scheme.
I'm sorry there, Kevin. I think you've broken up there ever so slightly. Do you mind repeating that last bit you just said?
I'm sorry. The Cavendish Road is in a controlled parking zone, and therefore it's more than likely that residents within the development would not be able to apply for a parking permit to park within the controlled parking zone. And residents, therefore, or future residents in contemplating buying a flat would be aware that there was no parking on site for them, and they wouldn't be eligible for a permit within Cavendish Road, and clearly take that into account when deciding whether they wanted to live in this location or not.
Thanks, Kevin. I just want to remind everyone, so this session is running until 7:30, and I see a couple of names of people who attended last night as well. Hopefully you have some additional questions as well. I'm finding tonight as informative as yesterday. One question I have here is, are you using the same as Grenfell materials, and will there be cladding? I'd like to say, well, I'm right in saying the answer is no in terms of the materials that we use with Grenfell, namely the ACM cladding, but in terms of the design palette, I'm just going to move on to the slide. And Marco, do you mind talking about that a little bit more? I know the usage of the materials isn't set in stone just yet, and they're being worked on at the moment. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. What we are looking at in terms of materials is 90% brick, and whatever isn't brick might be some stone detailing, like precast stone, reconstituted stone. You can see a little bit of that in that first image here in the center of the page, where you have the red brick and that white detailing, which is this kind of artificial stone. So that really relates to the more historical buildings that you can find around Sutton with the white and red materiality. So that's what we are thinking of using. and that's what we are developing in terms of elevations. We're steering clear of any other materials. It's not really something that we use very often, cladding in any case. This was the case before Grenfell. We've always preferred brick finishes for our buildings. That's personal preference. It's also kind of what we think we like doing as a practice. I think it's fair to say and it's safe to say that no one is ever going to use the same material that was used at Grenfell. It's definitely not something that you would want to use. I don't even think it would be a contextual choice. It's not just fire safety. It's also not the right choice for this location. So definitely not going to have anything of the sort.
Thanks, Marco. One question that hasn't come up tonight is a question that was asked last night, was what happens during the construction process and how do you mitigate the impact of construction, whether that be noise pollution, dust pollution on the surrounding development building, such as Lavender Court and Melton Court. I understand there's something called a construction management plan that normally gets submitted at some point during the planning process. Kevin, do you want to talk a little bit about that, how that mitigates the impact of construction?
Yes, quite often we would submit a construction management plan in draft form with the planning application to give sort of framework for how we feel the scheme will be constructed. Obviously, you've got some demolition to be undertaken, you've got some soil removal to be undertaken, likely that some trees may have to come out, and then you've got the new build, which includes a small basement for the cycles, etc., and then you've got the construction of the building itself. So at this stage, we've got ideas, and they will go into the draft construction management plan. Then normally, I mentioned earlier, pre-commencement conditions, but this would certainly be a condition, which would be that a final construction management plan is submitted once the contractor was on board, because the contractor themselves will have some views as to how it would be efficient for them to construct the building and safeguard residential amenity. And it would include things like contact details, email, mobile phone number, 24/7. So if there was an issue on the site, do you need to wash down the roads, wheel washing facilities, so you don't get mud tracked onto the roads, where you're doing demolition, depending on the time of year, whether it's likely to throw up dust that needs to be dampened down with some form of spray, sprinkler, and that would all be covered by initially the draft and then the final construction management plan. Obviously, with the hours of working, the normal hours of working, which fit with the environmental health regulations as well.
Let's go. We've got just one last question, I think, at the moment. I'm trying to think if there was anything else that had been mentioned previously. So actually, here's a question, Marco, in terms of the height of the building itself. So do we have an idea, and apologies if you've mentioned this already, what is the actual proposed height of the development itself?
So the building will be roughly 19 meters from ground level. We're also changing the ground level slightly. So currently the three houses sit on a little bit of a slope, if you're familiar with the site. So we are looking at lowering that slightly. So the building will, the ground floor of the new building will be slightly lower than the ground floor of the three houses at present. So it will be slightly less than what it is now. But from that finished floor level to the top parapet on the corner, which is the tallest point, will be around 19 meters.
So some of the final questions that have come up. So in terms of who the actual developer is, I think we kind of moved away in regards to that slide. We had a slide in regards to who the developer is, and it's a company called RIA Ventures, and they worked on developments in and around London, including South London, as well. I think Kevin mentioned earlier that they are in discussions with the Housing Association as well, who may be involved with the application later on down the line as well. Is that a fair description?
That's correct. Yes, the developer, the top right scheme there, both Marco and I worked on. We're working on 2 other applications in the adjoining borough for the same developer at the moment. And it's more than likely that in this particular case, there will be a registered provider, housing association, likely to be joint applicant with our client, who's RAA Ventures, when the application comes forward, and one of those will bring the scheme forward.
Can I ask a question in regards to that? So the fact that they are partnering with a housing association, does that mean it's more likely that a development is likely to come along? It's not one of those things where often talked about in the news of developers getting a planning permission and not doing anything with it.
We hope it will happen in any respect. In this particular case, in other cases we worked on, you will get a planning permission. It will be subject to legal agreement in terms of delivery of affordable housing, and at the point that planning permission is granted. Here, we are hopefully coming forward with a housing association as part of the application, which will give certainty that the affordable housing will be delivered, and if the affordable housing is going to be delivered because it's integrated within the building, it's tenure blind in that respect, then the rest of it will come forward as well.
Thanks, Kevin. And there's a question here, which is, can you send hard copies of the presentation? So the presentation itself will go up on the website as well, and we're happy to send hard copies of the presentation. You email us, or even on the feedback form as well. Let us know the address that you'd like it posted to. More than happy to arrange for that. As mentioned, there'll be further details posted on the website as well. And I guess a question from me to some residents as well. See what's meant to be coming along on July 19th, changing of COVID restrictions, and for instance, you may have further questions. You may wish to interact in person when you have those questions, and we're happy to facilitate that going along with the applications. Alongside the application as well. I'm just conscious that we only have about 8 minutes left, so please do ask if you have any questions. Here's a question, a bit of a curveball. Will squatters have rights? I'm not so sure what the questions are. There aren't any squatters on the site itself, and I think that answers that. If anyone wants to add anything further to that in terms of will squatters have rights? I think if whoever asked that question, if you can provide a bit more information, so the question, so it's quite. So at the moment there are no squatters on the site. One of the houses is vacant at the moment, but yeah, please. I think that answers that. If there are any other kind of questions, please do let us know. We've got a few minutes still to go, so about 17 people who are, I want to say, 17 people who are still also here, so please feel free to ask a question. Apologies, I think ever since I said that, it's dropped down to 16. So until the end, what I'll propose to do is, I think we'll give it, I think in terms of the presentation, we'll come to an end, but we'll happily stay on until 7:30. Should there be any further questions from attendees? So, I'm going to say to the panelists, thank you ever so much for the presentation that you've given. One question that comes up: are there going to be any other future opportunities to present to residents? sure we can. It probably will be nearer submission that we'll probably look to do something similar. It may be something that maybe in person, one hopes. But yes, we'll continue to be in contact and update you as the application and the plans progress. One thing I didn't mention was that this video will also be posted, both videos from tonight and last night will be hosted up on the website. Still see that we have 11 participants now, so we have come almost to the end. Feel free to ask any questions that you might have. We'll just wait along till 7:30. Oh, one thing I was going to say, well, whilst we're here, I'll just share my screen away from the presentation, and I will show you all because I sent a link earlier on the chat function, which was earlier on, which was with a poll. So it should only take 3 minutes to do, supposedly. You can provide some feedback. It'll ask you where you live, ask you for your name and your contact details, and just questions about what your thoughts are about development in regards to the design, your thoughts on homes in the area, the provision of affordable homes as well. In terms of contacting us further, so I'm just going to quickly go onto the website, and hopefully it does work. Here we are. So here we are. So on our website here, so that's www.cavendishroadsutton.com. You might even be able to see a live stream there. That was me from earlier on this evening. And just to remind you, our telephone number is 0800 433 2622. There is an email address as well, cavendish@huddlecommunications.com. And you can contact us by free post as well. So I know some of you already sent some comments in the post. So for instance, things like these, kind of a char away on the leaflet. You can send them in the post without any post charges. And just one last thing as we're coming up to our last minute, we'd really welcome kind of feedback on how we end up consulting with residents as things are looking to open up. I appreciate some residents are keener on the idea of these virtual events, and there are those who perhaps prefer some of those kind of more hybrid events where you have events with exhibition boards and kind of get perhaps have more detailed conversations with the consultants involved with those developments. But I would really welcome your thoughts and views on that. So thank you once again, everyone who's attended this evening. My name's Raj Mandar from Huddle Communications, and please do provide us with your feedback. Thank you. Good night.